Look how they massacred my boy.
Ah yes, Marvel Studios. How the mighty have fallen. Over the past few years, my interest in Marvel media has definitely decreased. When I was younger, I used to be so hyped to see the new releases, and every movie felt like one big event that me and my friends would all go see together. But now, the magic has pretty much run its course, and I can't really get excited for these new releases anymore. Now, I'm not going to pretend that I'm the first person to start a video like this. At this point, there's an entire internet subsection for why Phase 4 of the MCU kinda sucks.
I think there's a lot going on that has me feeling more and more disinterested with every passing month, which is surprising because Marvel's pumping out more and more content every year.
It's not just being worn out from so much of it, it's being genuinely put off because so much of it's being shoved down your throat.
I'm done with these Marvel movies that just waste your time rather than enhance it. Every single second spent watching all of these Marvel movies and Marvel shows is literally killing my brain.
And for good reason. At this point in time, the direction that the universe is taking seems to be very much scattered, and nowadays it's hard to find anybody that's excited for a new film. Mostly because Disney seems to be dedicated to pursuing quantity over quality, pumping out as many projects as possible in order to make the most money, rather than taking into account how good the movies and shows actually are, and also the conditions that the workers are facing. And this isn't just for Marvel, either. Yeah, I'm looking at you, buddy. Don't think you can hide from me. Which, needless to say, has been a bit of a problem, because a lot of the projects Marvel has been putting out have been fairly mixed. WandaVision was good, till the final episode, which nearly fumbled everything. Falcon and the Winter Soldier and Black Widow were generic as hell and didn't interest me despite having some neat ideas. What If was whatever. I lost interest after episode 5. Shang-Chi was amazingly refreshing until the jarring CGI ending, which takes away some of the emotion that it had. Eternals was a jumbled mess, which couldn't decide what it wanted to be, which is sad because I think Chloe Zhao is a good director who just tried to do a bit too much. The Hawkeye show, didn't watch it, and no one seems to care, so I never will. Moon Knight was interesting, but suffered from a rushed CGI conclusion. Holy shit, there are a lot of these. Multiverse of Madness had thrilling directing by Sam Raimi, but struggled with a fairly bloated and unstructured story, even though I actually kinda like this movie. Miss Marvel. Haven't seen it yet, but actually might because I heard it was pretty decent. And Thor Love and Thunder was okay. I would say the only genuinely good content Marvel has put out for this phase, for me at least, are Loki and No Way Home. Both of which have their problems, but are able to communicate their ideas and themes rather well, and aren't bogged down by an unsatisfying ending. And even for those two, I wouldn't necessarily call them peak MCU. But yeah, while it has taken me a while, I at this point agree with the general consensus that Marvel should have ended after Endgame, as that was just the perfect culmination of everything the MCU was building up to, and gave so many satisfying payoffs to a big franchise. Marvel essentially doomed itself to never reach those highs again. Now Kevin Feige and the people at Marvel, instead of having some big master plan for the MCU, seem to just be winging it and throwing stuff at the wall to see what sticks. I mean, for real, did we need an I Am Groot short film collection? Or a goddamn Agatha TV show? I mean, seriously, Marvel, what the fuck? Granted, this isn't to say everything has been a complete misfire. There are some genuinely good ideas that are going into this phase. The multiverse aspect is something they can play a lot with going forward, and I'm especially glad that we're getting more directors that are able to express their creative styles. But at this point, the stories in this phase have just encountered so many different problems. Everything from the odd pacing of the TV series, the overuse of hype and fan service, the decreased quality of the special effects, and the unsatisfying endings that come out of a lot of these projects have left many fans, like myself, feeling more distant. A while ago I never thought I would say this, but now I actually kind of agree with Martin Scorsese's point on how Marvel films are essentially theme park rides, designed to make you have fun and not deliver much else beyond that. And while I can appreciate if a movie gives me some good action, what really makes it a good experience is the substance within the story. And while I don't think modern Marvel is missing substance per se, they have definitely been mishandling it. Phase 4 of Marvel has just kind of let me down. Aside from Black Panther Wakanda Forever, I'm not really excited for anything else. This franchise feels very much past its prime, and stretching itself too thin, and Disney doesn't look like it will slow down anytime soon. I hope in the next few years Marvel will begin to restructure itself, and take the time necessary to make their projects as good as possible. Will they do this? Probably not. Nevertheless, all one can do is hope. Despite my problems with the oversaturation of Marvel, that isn't to say I've given up completely on the medium of superheroes. Now that Marvel has become so frequent with its cliches, I've kind of been looking at superhero stories in a different lens. Now my focus is on the writing and the characters, which I've grown to appreciate a lot more now, instead of having simple popcorn fun. So I thought it would be interesting if I went back and saw some different types of superhero media, and recommended it to you guys. Chances are a lot of you might have already seen these, but I definitely think a rewatch would be well worth it. And who knows, maybe it will give you a new idea of what superheroes can look like. First up, we have The Incredibles, and this one really needs no introduction. The Incredibles is absolutely fantastic on so many fronts. I'm sure most of you have already seen it, but for the 3 people that haven't, I'll explain it now. The story revolves around Bob and Helen Parr, aka Mr. Incredible and Elastigirl, former superheroes in retirement after they have become illegal by the government. Bob has to work in an office job, and Helen has to look after their kids. However, various circumstances lead to them becoming superheroes once again, this time fighting as a family. The Incredibles is a dazzling experience, and easily one of Pixar's best movies. Brad Bird's direction is engaging throughout, and I appreciate how he tackles big adult topics in movies for kids. Everything from Bob's downer attitude about his life, to Helen's stress over her husband's sporadic actions, feels extremely realized. However, it's in the family dynamic where this film really shines, as everyone has amazing chemistry and feels like an actual family. Along with this, the action slaps, the score is amazing, there are good jokes, great character moments, and the main villain Syndrome is an awesome antagonist who makes for exquisite commentary on nerd culture. Not much else to say here. If you haven't seen it, go watch it, and if you have seen it already but it's been a minute, I would highly encourage you to rewatch it. Next up, we have Todd McFarlane's Spawn, or Spawn the Animated Series. It tells the tale of Al Simmons, a former Marine who, after being killed by his partner, is transported to Hell, where he makes a deal with the demon Malbolgia in order to be brought back to life to see his wife once again. However, this deal comes at a cost, with Simmons being transformed into a Hellspawn, a soldier of Malbolgia's army. This series is probably one of the most underrated things I have ever watched. Like, you don't hear many people talk about it, which is unfortunate because this is such an amazing piece in HBO's catalog. The way this series delves into dark and disturbing topics is really well done, and the animation complements it to a T. Everything is so mucky and grimy, and the city landscape is all gross and corrupt. It's just so good, dude. One particular bit of praise for this show that should definitely not be glossed over is the voice acting. All the characters in this show have such unique dialogue and linguistic patterns, and all the voice actors do a great job at embodying those, with the biggest standout easily being Keith David as Spawn. I'm sure many of you know him from shows such as Community, but damn, this dude absolutely sells it as the dark and brooding anti-hero.
I want you to stay out of the alleys, Tony. Your business there is done, understand? Whatever wild hair you had up your ass about that place is officially plucked.
Nice.
The moral dilemma he constantly faces throughout each episode and the struggle he bears in holding on to his humanity is really fascinating, and David is absolutely engaging in this role. I should warn you that this is in no way a show for kids. The imagery and themes of this show are not for the lighthearted, and it does have a large amount of graphic violence, which I cannot show for obvious reasons. It also really isn't an action-based show. It's a lot more of a slow-paced character study with scraps of action. Can't recommend enough. This show is goated. Please go watch it. Moving on, we have Kick-Ass. This movie follows Dave Lazuski as he sets out on a path to become a real-life superhero, fighting crime and gaining popularity as Kick-Ass. Contrary to his name, he gets his ass kicked quite a bit, and eventually ends up in a plot with the Mafia and 2 other superheroes, Big Daddy and Hit Girl. This movie, while not being the most complex, is still a very fun time. As expected with Matthew Vaughn's early work, the action and comedy in this are balanced, and the more ridiculous and grander scale aspects of this film are gradually built up to, and don't feel too jarring. If you've seen X-Men First Class or Kingsman, then you likely know what to expect from his work already. And if you haven't, I would definitely say this is a nice introduction to what you'd be getting in for. The black comedy and hilarious over-the-top violence makes for an immensely enjoyable treat that you don't need to take too seriously. It's utterly chaotic, but balanced out by great performances by Aaron Taylor Johnson, Chloe Grace Moretz, and Nicolas Cage. As with Spawn, don't show this to kids, it's violent as hell. Transitioning from this, we have One Punch Man. This anime tells the story of Saitama, who after a rigorous workout of 100 push-ups, 100 sit-ups, 100 squats, and a 10-kilometer run every day, becomes so strong that he kills nearly every enemy in a single punch. Because of this, he grows bored due to the lack of any real challenge, and instead gains his energy from simple, mundane tasks. This show is just so badass. This is easily one of my favorite animes, and for good reason. The action in the show, particularly in the first season, is absolutely breathtaking, with tons of visual spectacle and amazing fights. Even despite the fact that Saitama can kill his enemies in one punch, it's still engaging whenever he's involved in a battle. The characters all have very interesting and unique personalities, and seeing them bounce off each other is an absolute joy to watch. Which relates to another part of the show that I love: the comedy. Although there are many different types of jokes throughout the show, the ones that are easily the most memorable relate to Saitama and how absurdly strong he is. And while you might think this would be tiresome after a while, the setups and punchlines are used very creatively throughout the series. Episode 3 of Season 1 is an absolutely amazing example of this, with the famous workout routine speech being laid out to masterful comedic effect. One knock against the show that I do have is that a lot of the best moments usually happen in Season 1. Season 2 is decent on its own, with cool new characters and good comedic moments, but it is a step down in terms of animation. Not to a massive degree, but you do notice it. Aside from that, I would highly recommend watching this show at least for Season 1, with Season 2 being a watchable addition. And finally, we have The Boys. And like The Incredibles and One Punch Man, it needs little introduction, and like Kick-Ass and Spawn, it is not for the faint of heart. To summarize as little as possible, The Boys takes place in a world where superheroes are real, but are being controlled by a massive corporation, and how a lot of these heroes do despicable acts behind the scenes. Our main cast is a group of essentially soup hunters who go after these corrupt superheroes in order to get dirt on them or even straight up kill them. Chances are you've already seen this series, and if you haven't yet, please go watch it, it's absolutely worth your time. In my opinion, this isn't just one of the best superhero shows, but one of the best shows on television, period. The storylines, the character growth, the dialogue, the themes, the satirization of superhero media, it's all just so wonderful. In an age where superhero content is constantly being pumped out, it's good to see something so different and introspective. I can't even begin to tell you how good this show is, you just have to watch it yourself. Also, how the fuck has Anthony Starr not been nominated for an Emmy? Like, come on, it's way past due for that. Before we close, here are some additional recommendations. Invincible, The Mask, Chronicle, Megamind, the good Hellboy movies, Judge Dredd, and a bunch of other good superhero media that I have not been caught up on, but looked pretty good from the start. In summary, while I am sad that Marvel started to lose my interest, I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing. If anything, it just shows how time has passed and my tastes have just changed at this point. Now I don't want to go see movies with overused special effects and forced unnecessary humor. Now I'm more interested in character introspection and tightly written plotlines and prevalent themes. Those shows and movies have given me that to a massive degree. And with Marvel's constant output of big budget mixed content, sometimes it's nice to scale back and admire the work of the little guys. The ones who care not just presenting the viewer with entertainment, but also giving them lessons to learn, questions to ponder, moments to reflect on, all packaged within a carefully paced and well thought out story. And until Marvel Studios, and Disney as a whole for that matter, slows down and truly starts putting those things first, then it's safe to say that I am exiting the Marvel hype train. I'll see some of their new releases, and hell, I'll still read the comics, but I can safely say that I'll never be as big of a fan as I was 3 years ago if this keeps on going the way it is now. So please, Marvel, find your footing. Make us feel invested again.